Well, after a weekend off for the FA Cup third round and just the two manager specials from the EFL Championship, we are back with a full weekend of action across Friday and Saturday as Matchweek 27 starts another hectic run of fixtures. We will run through all 12 of the matches, give our preview and our score predictions, and as always, encourage you to do exactly the same in the comments below. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out when we return on Sunday night to look ahead to a big midweek fixture list. Let's go and have a look back though before we start any of that at what happened in match week 26 all the way back on the 4th of January. 3 games postponed for those of you that remember, just 9 matches made it in the end. And it was a bit of a frustrating weekend for me because I actually called all of the home wins correctly, only one of them with a perfect score, which meant that I just picked up 7 points. The perfect score coming in the final game on Monday night for Leicester's win over West Brom, which ultimately was the undoing of Ryan Mason. And then home wins for Millwall, Middlesbrough, QPR and Birmingham also picked me up a point apiece. That left me on 7 points, not a terrible return for 9 matches, and in joint 4th with a huge number of you who are in a similar boat to me. So level with me on 7 are Teo, Peter, Marco and Steve. Well done to all 4 of you. But our top 3 are as follows. Tony on 8 in 3rd place, Nathan on 9 in 2nd, and then our match week winner, the only person in the double figures last weekend, was Jamal with 11. Well done to you. You are our match week 26 winner. But what will you produce in match week 27, which starts on Friday night with a new manager in the dugout at West Bromwich Albion? They're at home to high-flying Middlesbrough, who got back in form under Kim Hellberg with a massive 4-0 win at home to Southampton, despite what was a relatively even and cagey first half the second. I mean, we've mentioned it before. When Southampton let in a goal, they collapsed, and Borough took advantage of that. Morgan Whittaker, excellent on the day again. Someone who's becoming the key player for Borough at the minute. But they did give up a few very good chances on their goal. And to be honest, on another day against a more ruthless team, could have been a very different outcome. And they could have found themselves behind, which had been their undoing in a couple of games previous. They lost in the FA Cup, but they'll be focusing on the promotion battle now. Whereas for West Brom, they are through on penalties in the FA Cup. But with a new manager in the dugout, having lost both of their 2 league games in 2026 so far away at Swansea and Leicester. We mentioned it a lot in the manager special the other day, which is up in the eye above, but their away form really has been their undoing. They've struggled so much on the road. It's something they've got to try and address with Eric Ramsey. And it's also hard to call what's going to happen on this first day because even when Borough haven't been winning games recently, they've been fairly tight defensively for the most part. The only time they've conceded more than one was against Bristol City just before Christmas. Since then, a lot of low-scoring games. And I think I'm going to go for that here. I'm not sure how instant the impact is going to be with Eric Ramsey. And West Brom have been pretty good at home this year still. So I'm going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline and start on Friday night with a 1-1 draw. As we move on to Saturday and 11 matches starting in the Midlands with Coventry City versus Leicester City. Coventry, pretty important week for them because 4 without a win in all competitions, went out of the FA Cup, lost that game at Birmingham, the thriller on TV last Sunday. They also had their struggles against Charlton and Ipswich. It's not been a good festive period. A few players out, but they have started to reinforce the squad again, which could be crucially important moving forward. Romain Eza adding a little bit of creative flair. But if you look at the game in hand, if Ipswich win it, they've only got 6 points between them and third then, which would be Middlesbrough. The gap is closing. The worries are starting to mount up. So Coventry need to address their form soon. However, they'll be glad to be back at home after 3 on the road. For Leicester, a good win in the FA Cup. An important win against West Brom in the 94th minute. And again, it's Fatawu who digs them out of a hole late on with a moment of magic. He's someone they've just got to keep hold of this time. It's not been a convincing season for Leicester, but despite that, they're still 4 points off the playoffs, and that's the difference between them and a couple of the other sides. They're still picking up some points. They got themselves 2 home wins over the New Year period, and that's going to make a big difference. For this one, though, they're going away to a Coventry side that have the break they needed, will be refreshed a little, and are just starting to get a couple of players in. So I think for Coventry, it will be a narrow victory. Leicester have been poor on the road this year, albeit they've been good on the counter against some teams, and Coventry do give up chances. I could easily see this being 2-1 either way, though I'm convinced that'll be the score. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Coventry City because, look, the rut can't last for too much longer. The second early kickoff is one of the chasing pack. It is Ipswich Town against struggling Blackburn Rovers. For Blackburn, out of the cup on penalties after a run of 4 without a win in the league, including 3 draws. They did end their goalless streak against Charlton Athletic with a 2-2 draw where they came from behind. And to be fair, from 2-0 down, other sides would have folded. So you've got to give them credit in that sense. But they're in real trouble at the moment. Oxford have obviously taken a gamble in the dugout, which we talked about last week. Norwich are flying. Pompey are starting to pick up a few results. So it is going to be a concern for Blackburn if they can't turn those draws into wins. And they're really struggling for goals at the moment, which is a big concern for Valérien Ismaël's side. Just 24 in 25 matches this year. And they're facing an Ipswich side that, while not being absolutely spectacular, are just finding a way to pick up wins consistently now. They beat Blackpool in the cup, but prior to that beat Oxford, Coventry, Sheffield Wednesday, and got a decent 0-0 draw at Millwall. It was a very good Christmas and New Year period. They were brilliant at Coventry. Against Oxford, maybe not quite so convincing, but it was a difficult game against a side that sat deep behind the ball. They managed to get over the line in the end. So, have to give them credit. I think they look really strong at the moment. Could see Blackburn come into play for a draw, but is that going to be enough in their current situation? I don't know. I think Ipswich are going to have to be the aggressors here. It comes down to whether they get an early goal or not. I think they might, and I feel that Valérien Ismaël could be in trouble soon. I'm going to go for Ipswich to win this one, and I'm going to go big by 3-1. As we move on to the final early kickoff and two sides that are flying high in the playoffs, it is Watford versus Millwall. For Watford, a very heavy cup defeat, but at the expense of brilliant league form, I'm not sure they'll be absolutely devastated. It was a really poor performance in that FA Cup match, albeit not with a lot of their first team out at times. However, in the league, they have been scintillating. 4 wins in succession over the festive fixtures against Stoke, Leicester, Norwich and Birmingham. Good wins, convincing wins in some cases, and found different ways to get results in games. For Millwall, a pretty similar run, to be honest. Beaten 5-1, the same score to Premier League Burnley in the Cup. But 2 big home wins, 2-1 in the league, a couple of 0-0 draws against 2 of the relegated sides. Given the players they've had out, some of the formations they've had to play, some of the players that have been filling in different areas of the pitch, I think it's a pretty good period for them. It is going to be difficult away at a Watford side who are so strong at home. We have seen them be frustrated into draws occasionally. I just think Watford might have too much. I'm going to completely disregard their 5-1 defeats last week and go for Watford to win a narrow game by 2-1 and overtake Millwall in the process. As we move on to the 3 p.m. kickoffs and two sides separated by just 3 points, it is Charlton Athletic versus Sheffield United. Both lost and conceded plenty in the cup again at the weekend. Sheffield United in a really strange game against Mansfield, but made changes and the defensive folk that came in didn't cover themselves in glory. For Charlton, a heavy defeat against Chelsea, which no real shame in it, but the manner of the goals they conceded is a concern. And it has been an issue for Charlton over the last few months. Yes, a crippling injury list at times. Yes, a lot of players out. But even against Blackburn, from 2-0 up away from home, you don't often see Nathan Jones' sides throw it away. So definitely some concerns to be addressed. They are just 5 points clear of that relegation zone and have got to start picking up wins soon. For Sheffield United, though, generally fantastic form in the league. Beat Leicester and Birmingham convincingly at home. It's not been as good on the road. They got that narrow win at Stoke, but against Wrexham and West Brom, poor defensive efforts again. And it's the same concern for both of these sides. Can they keep the goals out? Charlie Kelman's starting to hit a bit of form for Charlton, which helps. Obviously, Sheffield United have extended the deal with Patrick Bamford now, who's come in and made a real impact. The likes of O'Hare and Cannon starting to find form as well. So I think this will be a game where both teams score. I just think Sheffield United are stronger at the moment, and I still don't rule Chris Wilder out of getting them in the playoffs. I'm going to go for Sheffield United to edge this one by 2-1 at the Valley. As we move on to the second new manager of the match day, it is falling upwards, Oxford United and Matt Bloomfield, with Bristol City the visitors to the Kassam this time. Bloomfield, after being sacked from a League One club, finds himself in a championship. We've discussed it in great detail about the fact he was chosen to replace Gary Rowett. That's up in the eye above. But Bristol City, a fantastic win in the cup. A bit of a weird festive period though. It goes into their inconsistency and proves the point we've made. They had it under Liam Manning last year for the first time where you could start to trust them. Not the case anymore. 2-0 defeat against Preston, 2-1 defeat at Millwall. In between that, a 5-0 win at home to Pompey and a good win at West Brom and against Borough. Such a strange team, so hard to predict, but they're still in the mix and they've got a chance. So if they can hit form, then fantastic. But Oxford, we know they're going to set up almost like the away side. We saw what happened in the reverse fixture. A rare, brilliant Oxford away win in the Championship. They've had their struggles recently against Swansea and Ipswich. Weren't great at MK Dons in the Cup. But Matt Bloomfield is going to have to try and instill a little bit of confidence and a little bit of attacking power into this team. They've only scored 25 this season. They've really struggled to replicate that home form that really kept them up last season. So I wonder if this will be the time it can happen. We've seen sides set up cautiously against them and they've just not been able to break them down. So I'm not sure where to go with this one. And as a result, despite the fact I think Bristol City might win it, I'm going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline. It's always hard with a new manager to call. So I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece. As we move into the second half and two sides that will be looking at the playoffs, one of them already in those places. It is Preston North End versus Derby County. For Preston, cup disappointment followed two brilliant league results. A 2-0 win away at Bristol City. Really good away performance again. And they're just solid. They've kept 3 clean sheets in their last 4 league games. The Wigan Cup tie is one that nobody should have watched and it was as awful as many predicted. But generally, Preston have been very difficult to beat this year. For Derby, a little bit different to previous years. They've had more success on the road than usual, but not as solid at the back as we've come to expect under John Eustace. Against Leeds, they were beaten heavily in the second half. Against Wrexham, no disappointment in the league the week before, especially having pulled level before the break to throw the game away. Not sure they'll be thrilled with that. And it's not been the best spell for Derby. Just that Borough win in their last 6 matches in all competitions. I just don't know that this is going to be a great game because Derby have been susceptible to the counter, but Preston have set up very solidly. I just wonder whether I go bold here. I'm going to throw out a 0-0. Preston's get another point to stay in the playoffs and Derby to stay in touching distance. As we move on to a battle at the bottom between Sheffield Wednesday and Portsmouth. Sheffield Wednesday have now lost 4 in a row without scoring. They're really struggling at the moment. But look, it's more important they sort the long-term situation. And for now, they've just got to muddle through. They're still fighting, but they're running out of steam. And as the season goes on, those same legs playing high-intensity matches over and over again does become very difficult. You could argue more of a struggle at the moment, particularly defensively, goes to Portsmouth. We won't judge them on the 4-1 defeat to Arsenal, but against Bristol City the game before, obviously they lost 1 to postponement, they were absolutely abysmal at the back. And we've said it all season, Pompey have been terrible defensively away from home since they've come up from the Championship. But they've carried a goal threat a lot of the time, and they've always been good at home. Those things have deserted them at times this year. Yes, they got big home wins against Charlton and Blackburn, which keeps them just above the dotted line for now. With Norwich picking up, you feel it's a matter of time. And I'm looking at the rest of the season and thinking if you want to stay up, you're going to have to get above a Blackburn, a Charlton, a Swansea, a West Brom if their new manager doesn't start well. And I don't see where it comes from away from home. They're going away to a side on -7 points that have won 1 game all season, incidentally against Portsmouth. And I'm wondering whether or not they can get a win here. And I don't think I can back them to. Defensively, I don't trust them. And as a result, I'm not going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to score 1. I'm going to go for them to score 2. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw at Hillsborough. And for Sheffield Wednesday to pick up another point, keeping Portsmouth in trouble. As we move on to a side that I watched live in the flesh last week, it is Southampton versus Hull City. The Saints have dropped to 15th in the league after a pretty turgid festive period. A heavy second half defeat against Borough, and resilience is definitely the question there. There are a lot of similarities to some other teams in the division, but also defensively. You let 1 goal in and you just feel the collapse is coming. I watched their Doncaster game live in the flesh in the FA Cup last week. They were 3-0 up. They were completely dominant at half-time. They came back out and gave away a poor goal from a set piece. And then for the next 20 minutes were under constant siege, conceded another and made it one hell of a cup tie from a position where Doncaster looked down and out at half-time and they gave them a chance. Against Borough, absolutely fine first half. Had chances, should have probably been ahead by the time that Borough took the lead, but then collapsed and let in 4. And defensively, all season, Southampton have looked so vulnerable. 38 goals conceded. It's a really difficult season for them. They've got to find a way to improve defensively. And then going forward, even against Borough and Millwall, they've had their own frustrations. They're not taking chances again. It doesn't look that dissimilar to what we've seen under Will Still earlier in the year. It's a team that is underperforming in terms of chances taken and goals conceded. But when you watch the games, you can kind of see why it's happening. It's that soft underbelly. And they come up against a Hull side who, yes, have dropped off a little bit recently in terms of goal output, but are still picking up results. The Stoke defeat on New Year's Day was their first over the festive period. They've picked up a few wins, even by 1-0, which is not what we expect from Hull, and nicked their cup game on penalties. But even when they've not been able to be as entertaining, they've found a way to get results. And they're a side that have actually shown they're capable of getting results in different ways, which is something we always say is important in that championship mix. Yes, they've conceded as many goals as Southampton, but they've generally come in clusters. And when they've been able to win games, they've been showing that they're capable of keeping clean sheets, something that the Saints haven't done so well. So I think I'm going to go for a bit of a high-scoring game here. I know Hull haven't recently, but if ever there's a game to change it, it's now. Southampton, I just don't think they're convincing at all at the minute. I'm going to go for the away side to win this game. I'm going to go for an exciting one. 3-2 to Hull. They cause chaos against Southampton at home. Can they do the same on the road as well? As we move into the final three and a penultimate 3 p.m. kickoff is Stoke City versus QPR. Two sides on the outskirts of that playoff mix, but Stoke City seem to be back in form. 3 wins in a row in all competitions, beat Coventry in the cup with a good win, but against Norwich and Hull City, victories, clean sheets, what we were seeing at the start of the season. Really good win away at Norwich as well, who had been in decent form to that point. For QPR, a few struggles, of course, beat Sheffield Wednesday convincingly, but that's their only win since Christmas. Weren't able to get 3 points at Pompey, against West Brom, against Norwich, and against West Ham in the cup. Fell to defeat in the end. But look, it's a side that works to a high intense style. They're going to have to add a couple more in January, but they're on the right track, and they're still only 3 points off the playoffs. I do think it will be a low scoring game. We've seen QPR have been a bit more cautious at times on the road after those early season big defeats. So I'm going to go for Stoke to win again and to win by 1-0 again. I just think Mark Robins will keep them in the mix. And the final 3 p.m. kickoff, we move over to Wales and Wrexham versus Norwich City. Wrexham involved in that thrilling FA Cup tie where they did eventually get through against Nottingham Forest on penalties. But what a festive period in the league as well. 4 successive victories, up to 9th place, a point off the playoffs. How do they keep talking about Phil Parkinson being under pressure at times? He has been brilliant this season. A fantastic result away at Derby, a brilliant effort at Blackburn and against Preston. They're beating sides that are in good form. They're winning in different ways. We saw the thriller against Sheffield United from 3-1 down and against Forest in the Cup. Then showed some tight away displays like at Blackburn. Just really impressed overall. For Norwich, they are in better form under Philippe Clement. The Stoke and Watford games seem like a bit of a blip, but actually the setup seems to be working better for them away from home. Did really well at QPR, got a good point at Preston. They look a side that are a threat on the counter. Obviously, Josh Sargent is back and starting to score goals, which helps. Makama, absolutely brilliant at the moment. A real shining light for this poor team. And with a win this weekend, you feel they could get out the relegation zone if other results go their way, particularly what we predicted for Pompey. I'm not sure they are going to win this game, though. It is important they try and avoid defeat, keep a little bit of momentum. It's 10 points from 18 in the league, but Wrexham are in great form. Whether they can sustain the wins, I don't know. I do fancy them to get something from this. Maybe another one of those thrilling late equalisers. I don't know. I'm going to go high scoring, and for the second time in this match week, I'm going for 2 goals apiece. And the final game is the 5:30 kickoff on TV, and a side that desperately need to find some form away from home. Birmingham City travel to Swansea City, where Victor Matos is starting to pick up the form, but despite 3 wins in their last 5, some frustrating defeats on the road, it does seem like it's going to be reliance on home form at the minute. We are starting to see more of that sort of style from Maritimo, where it was controlling the game, and maybe sort of what we saw from, I guess I'm not comparing the levels, but if you go back to early in Mourinho's career, where it would be 1 or 2-0, then stop and control the match. Make sure you get the win. And that seems to be at home certainly the approach they're trying to take. Good wins against Wrexham, against Oxford and West Brom over the festive period. A couple of clean sheets, which had been hard to come by for Swansea late in Alan Sheehan's spell. And although the last couple of games were disappointing, the cup defeat and of course a narrow one away at Millwall late on as well to throw it away, it has still been a decent start overall. They've got themselves 8 points clear of the relegation zone, but you do feel at home to a side that are so poor on the road, they've got to try and pick up 3 here as well. Birmingham did get a narrow away win in the FA Cup, despite the fact they were 2-0 up and coasting at half-time. Again, made a game of it in the last 10 minutes. Important win against Coventry. I still maintain that if they lost that game, I think the manager would have come under pressure. Dukes looked really impressive, it's got to be said, and he did look a threat going forward, but that's never really been the argument about Birmingham this year. The problems have been at the other end, defensively and tactically away from home. We saw it again against Watford, against Sheffield United, and we mentioned it in the Ryan Mason special for West Brom. Young coaches that keep doing the same thing and struggling to adapt away from home and expecting a different outcome. So on that basis, I can't back Birmingham to win. At the moment, you just cannot back Birmingham to win an away game in a championship. But I might fancy them to nick a draw here. Swansea won their last home game by 1-0, but I feel Birmingham have slightly more of an attacking threat. So against my better judgment, I'm going to go for Birmingham to get a point on the road. I'm going to finish as I started, with a Championship's favourite scoreline of 1 goal apiece. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted this weekend in Matchweek 27. I've gone for the big winners to be Ipswich at home against Blackburn by 3-1, and Hull City away at Southampton in a thriller by 3-2. I've only gone for 3 teams to fail to score, 2 of them in the same game between Preston and Derby. And I've also gone for 2 thrilling 2-2 draws at the bottom of the table, with Norwich City nicking 1 at Wrexham, and for Portsmouth away at bottom side Sheffield Wednesday. But those are just my predictions for Match Week 27. Bold and high scoring is my call. You agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments. Give us your score predictions. And as I mentioned at the start, if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out when we return on Sunday to look ahead to a full midweek fixture list in the EFL Championship. If you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on for plenty more from the podcast. We've also got 2 manager specials last week, West Brom and Oxford in the eye above if you've missed them. But for now, enjoy the weekend's football, and I'll see you at the end of it on Sunday as we look ahead to all of Tuesday and Wednesday's action in Match Week 28 of this championship season.